So I want to get into or Greg, did you have a question? You look like you're.
No, go ahead. I
was just going to say, I want to get into the financing side of things quickly, because I think, we were talking about it before we got on air, but I think there's a very common misconception from people that if they are buying a cottage, the requirement to kind of the barrier to entry is that, the perceived large down payment that you need to get into that. And there are many opportunities where you can actually buy what would be deemed a second home, and you can actually buy that for as little as 5% down. So Stephen, I know I sent you kind of a document earlier today just kind of outlining the difference between a second home and a vacation property, and I can kind of touch on the differences between the two. So a second home would be something that, depending on the location, you could finance it up to 95% of the value of the home. And these are kind of the guidelines that need to be there. So it has to be basically 4 seasons. So it has to be accessible by road. So all road types are permitted. It can be gravel, paved, what have you. The property must be winterized with a permanent heat source. Water source must be a well, municipal serviced, or cistern. Water must be drinkable. There must be good market appeal in the area with no adverse influences. So you guys were kind of touching on that quickly. At a minimum, the property must have a kitchen, 3-piece bathroom, bedroom, and common area. So you can't have just a shack in the woods and finance it at 95%. But I think that's more just to dissuade people from, like a hunting camp or something like that, where it's just kind of an actual shed. The property must be zoned and used as residential, rural, or seasonal. The foundation must be permanent and installed beyond the frost line. So this includes concrete, block, or preserved wood foundations. And then it can only have 1 unit. So you can't have like a triplex cottage or anything like that. The second type would be a vacation property. So again, this is specific to the location and the property itself, but these are typically financed up to anywhere from 65 to 80% of the value. So, down payments of 20 to 35%. It says insured only financing is available for purchases of quality vacation properties that may not be accessible year round. So there must be no intent to occupy these properties year round. So this is like a strictly, we go there in the summer. It's kind of our summer getaway. So there can't be, it says no permanent heat source is required. So you can't have a wood stove, fireplace stove, or heat blower. Foundation may be floating, so it can be sitting on blocks. Seasonal access is acceptable. Water source need not be potable. However, running water is required. It can be lake water intake. Indoor plumbing can be chemical, portable, or a holding tank. And the property may be accessible only by boat. So, Greg, I know I think a couple of weeks ago, we were recording and you had someone that was living on that island. So that would qualify. You could do that with let's just say even 35% down. You can get some really good deals. And I think when people are thinking of this, they might be thinking, well, let's take some of our equity of our primary home and buy an investment property. Well, you can do the same thing, but buy, as you guys are mentioning, kind of that retirement plan / home now, right? And not have to wait.
Yeah, we've actually done 3 island properties already this year.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah, they're a little more laborious.
Yeah, and there's other factors too, right? With the financing, like if it is boat access only, it needs to have a deemed access point to actually get like a land access somewhere.
You need to have luckily Big Rito, for example, has 3 marinas. So you can have a lease at a marina to take your boat out. But if you want to build something else on the island, you really need to check with the municipalities and the township and the conservation authority to make sure that you have permission from your deemed access to access your property, if that makes sense.
Do you know how many island properties there are on Big Rito?
I should know that. I would say a couple hundred, I would think.
Really, eh? Wow.
I would think maybe not that many. I should know that.
You should have said like 87.
Probably
and then everyone would have gone, wow.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's 100, that's incredible.
Yeah. They might not all be island, but boat access only.
Right.
So my family has an island on the lake, both my mom's side and my dad's side. So we're like longtime islanders. I wouldn't have any. I love it.
It might even be considered Vikings, being on the water so often, eh? Just been there for so long, eh? Generations of Pete's family.
Yeah, nobody can come unless they own a boat. If they own a boat, then they're allowed to come. So it's sort of best of both worlds.
Amazing.
Just a moat beside, just a huge moat.
gotta get past the dragon first, but
And the islands a couple of years ago were almost a bit of a tough sell for some people. They're like, oh, well, what do I do in the winter? And, there's that gray period where you can't snowmobile out to it and, you can't boat out to it. So that was a bit of an issue where now with the jump in prices, all of a sudden people are like, well, that, 500, 600 grand that I was going to spend on a cottage and kind of held off on, now it's not even reasonable. So it's like an island's their option. And we've seen a massive increase in interest in just having boat access property.
One guy I know in Big Rito, he stayed at his island property all winter long, bought himself a hovercraft. So that's how he got it. Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds like magic.
I know, right?
It does sound like magic. And do you do you guys know what the biggest selling area right now is in Ontario for cottages?
In Ontario, I mean, I would think the most popular is still north of Toronto in that Muskoka area, Haliburton,
Kawartha Lakes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any inventory anywhere, to be honest. I don't think that you're going to find. I think that anything that comes up that's road access right now and anywhere in Ontario is still flying on the market.
Yeah.
We're very lucky, especially like between Ottawa and Toronto. There's so many opportunities within an hour and a half to have like a beautiful getaway. Most places I feel like you got to drive a fair amount of time, but I mean, Ottawa, you can hop on the highway Friday at 4 and be at your cottage by 5. And it's a great, we're in a great location as far as proximity to everything else. Do you guys see a large amount of American clients that are coming over the border to buy in Ontario? Is that something that you've seen in the past?
We did, yeah. There were a time. I mean, obviously not in the last 2 years, but yeah, a lot of our good friends on Big Rito. They're from Pennsylvania, Ohio, Upper State New York, and they've been coming there for generations as well. So it's starting to sort of flow back. I'm wondering what those cottages are going to do if they're not allowed over the border in the next while, but. Yeah, it's pretty popular.
We've done a couple that were just sight unseen too, like a FaceTime tour through the house, and they purchase. If they can't come see it, but they still want to get that waterfront property, then it works that way.
Yeah, that's actually why I was asking. We have a couple friends that have cottages in Thousand Islands, and they were saying that a couple of their neighbors are from the American side, and they've just been, ghost towns because they haven't been able to get across. Unless they rip across the water, with their Canadian flag on the back of the boat, hoping to deceive a few people. But I think that's supposed to be changing soon, is it not? That they'll be able to come across again?
I think so. Well, they hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a little point here. I don't know if you guys, we have a cottage up on the Ottawa River where Wilderness Tours used to be, and it's fractional ownership, right? It's more like there's 10 owners. It's more like a $1 million chalet kind of thing. And, we were having a hell of a time trying to sell fractional ownership. You get 5 weeks a year, right? Couldn't sell it. And then all of a sudden, late, I guess early this year, people just started, they were all for it. We sold out basically. It was like, you couldn't sell fractional ownership for like, well, I don't know. I kind of want my own thing. And then now it's just like, no, here, sold.
It's the same with islands. Like, people are desperate, and it's like, well, if that's my option, then that's my option. We'll take it. We can get it.
We also can't get any rentals right now either, right? So, if you want to get a cottage rental somewhere, you better be looking into 2022 or 2023. Yeah. So, it's fractional ownership is not a bad idea to, ensure that you get some weeks at a cottage and don't have to worry about trying to find a spot to rent. Because we're seeing any inventory that is left over is getting bought up by people that are just turning them into Airbnbs and short-term rentals for sure.
So Greg, for those, let's say there's 10 owners, they basically each have 10%, and as the value goes up, they have that same ownership basically. And how do you decide? You just sell your own shares?
I mean, the value has just kind of stayed the same since it launched.
But if those people, I was just thinking to Pete's point, like if they wanted to get that kind of temporarily, just so at least they have something, and then in say a year or two from now, if something does come available, they can like, would they just sell their share basically to someone else?
They can sell it to someone else. I wouldn't say that there's necessarily an increase in value there. But who knows? Maybe it'll jump up 5, maybe it'll stay the same, drop a few. Just depends on what the interest is.
How do you decide what
just like the market
have? Like if
you get a summer week fixed. You get a fixed summer week, and then the rest is kind of like a lottery system.
Cool.
You just choose your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they draw.
It's like season tickets.
You get it. We got really lucky this year. We had what did we have? We had February, April, June. We just had June, and now we got 2 weeks in August because there's one of the owners he decided to stay in Florida. He's like, I'm not coming back for the summer. So we got 2 weeks.
Nice.
And then I got another one in October. And that's great for us. We were there at Christmas last year, which was amazing, but now we'll just do something else. Yeah, we love it. I mean, and it's right on the river, and we got our own private beach and everything. I mean, yeah, it's pretty awesome. Like you can't, and the thing is, it's like, it sleeps 9. It's, it's not a standard cottage. It's very nice. And we just go in and we bring our food and then we leave.
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So Pete and Trevor, if people wanted to, if they want to find out some more information about you guys, or how to kind of get into that cottage world, what's the easiest way for them to connect with you both?
Through, our Instagram is where we promote a lot of the waterfront stuff. So even the things that are off market, which we see a lot of, our Instagram page. So through Remax Boardwalk or Clark Bastedo team. The Clark Bastedo team has been around for, since the beginning. And now we've sort of transitioned. We've just made Clark Bastedo into sort of our waterfront division. So that's where we're just exclusively putting cottages and the 4-season luxury stuff.
Yeah, I don't think the website's quite up and running yet for the waterfront, but we're working on rolling that out. So that'll be if you want waterfront, it'll be directed that over there.
Yeah, I'd have to imagine that a lot of the stuff you see is just from connections on the lake, right? People are like, oh, Pete, we're thinking about listing next summer or what have you. And just kind of those off-market listings, which is excellent, right? If you're a buyer.
Some people, it's a 3 to 5 year plan. Like they've had me come in like every summer for the last 5 years, and you have a beer with them and they're like, well, what do you think this year? I'm like, well, this. And then,
yeah.
and then, and this year everybody's lucked out. So